into your eyes is so incredible. You're the light that I see in the dark. You're a star, you're so unique, you're unforgettable. You light my soul on fire, girl, with your spark. Yeah, yeah. Baby, you're a diamond. And girl, it's time for your love to shine. Oh, high, 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 high up into the sky. You never did shine so bright like tonight. Oh, high, 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 high up into the sky. You never did shine so bright like tonight.
Oh yeah, you're my peace after a long day. I love the way you light up the room, feel like sun rays, like a flower on sunny days. I'm really just trying to find a way. You deserve all of the praise. If I cast shade, I don't mean to. No, I would never leave you. No, all alone, girl, I need you. In a crowded room full of people, I could only see you. Baby, you're a diamond. And girl, it's time for your love to shine. Oh yeah,
high up into the sky. You never did shine so bright like tonight.
shine for me, girl.
High up into
Shine
the
bright,
sky.
shine bright.
You never did shine so bright like tonight. Ooh, girl, your love tonight got me on the high. Never felt so alive, no. Yeah, you light up the night like the stars in the sky. Keep shining. Oh yeah, girl, take me higher. My loving for you is on fire, yeah. Burning desire, yeah. The type no expire, no. Girl, take me higher. Lost when your body perspire, yeah. My mind go haywire, spinning like a race car tire. High up into the sky. You never did shine so bright like tonight.
Shine for them, baby.
High up into the sky. You never did shine so bright like tonight. You keep shining. High up into the sky. You never did shine so bright like tonight. High up into the sky. You never did shine so bright like tonight. You keep shining. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to our 8-part inner wellness series. I see there's folks joining us on Facebook Live on Big UCE Radio, so we appreciate you all being here with us tonight as we are on part 5, running away, a 2-part conversation. Before we dive in and I hand this over to Sala and Scarlett, I just want to thank our sponsors who help us put this mental health series together. This event is sponsored actually by Shoreline Community College and the WAVES program, worthy of achievement, validation, empowerment, and success for Asian American and Native and Pacific Islander students. The Big UCE Foundation is a local nonprofit organization committed to building vibrant communities through youth development, arts and culture, music and entertainment, radio, sports, and business. And also to our public health departments, Tacoma-Pierce County Public Health, and to the Office of Equity and Community Partnerships at King County Public Health. Yeah, and then so with that, we're having, I think there's about 4 more conversations left. 5, 6. Yep. I had to count that in my head there for a second. But yeah, we're pretty excited about this one because it unpacks some things relative to how young folks relate to their parents and other adults. But with that, I pass this over to our amazing therapists, Sala and Scarlett. Welcome.
Thank you, Celie. Good evening, everyone, and welcome into tonight's community conversation. And tonight's conversation topic is called Running Away. This is a two-part discussion to explore why maybe our young people are feeling like running away. And then also, and we say two-part because in the beginning, first half of the conversation tonight, we will be mainly talking to the youth or our young people. And so my amazing colleague Scarlett is going to be leading or facilitating that portion of tonight's conversation. And then we go on to the second part of the conversation, in which we're also speaking to parents as well, because we believe that it's really important to be able to address both the adults and our young people in this conversation. So but before I go on further, my name is Sala Afalava. If you are new here, I am a licensed mental health therapist here in the state of Washington. So I see clients through my own private practice, New Hope Counseling, PLLC. Then I also, see clients through other organizations that we partner with. And then we also have these amazing conversations in these platforms that are sponsored by our amazing sponsors tonight that Celie just spent an entire 5 minutes shouting out. So thank you again to our sponsors for making all of these community conversations possible and accessible to our community. So we truly appreciate that, because if that wasn't there, all of this information would not have been accessible to our communities. And a lot of the information that Scarlett and I talk about, our communities would not have been able to get it unless they're paying for a therapy session sitting across from a mental health therapist. And that can be very, very costly. So Scarlett and I's goal is always just to be able to sort of remove that barrier and hopefully be very, very accessible to our community. So if you are joining us tonight, just know that we absolutely welcome the engagement, and we hope that you engage with us tonight. We hope that you bring your questions, comments, or even if you want to share stories with us pertaining to our topic, because we don't have that much time. So feel free to share them. Feel free to comment and say, hey, I want to share a story that's related to what we're talking about. If you have any questions, let us know. We're very good at being able to gauge on the Facebook Live, on every platform, to see if there's any comments or questions. So let us know. But yes, going back again, tonight's conversation is on running away. And the reason why Scarlett and I put this together is because at the time when we were kind of pulling all of these different series together, this is one of the topics. This is one of the themes that kept coming up. There were a lot of postings on Facebook amongst our PI families that were just posting about their young people, their teenagers running away, and sharing them on Facebooks and things like that. And we just felt as clinicians that this is something that needs to be talked about within our communities. And so we put together this conversation to engage not only hopefully the youth, or hopefully for the parents to understand what the youths are going through, and then at the same time be able to give them some tools to help facilitate some of this conversation in this very, very unique topic. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to my amazing colleague Scarlett to get us started with the first half of this conversation, and then I'll facilitate our second half for tonight's community conversation on running away. So without any further ado, this is my colleague Scarlett.
Thanks, Sala. So appreciate you so much. And it is always such a joy and an honor to be able to do these community conversations with you. Again, just to continue to emphasize, we want to thank our sponsors for continuing to sponsor these community events so that we can continue to pass on this information to our community, because like Sal said, what we found out is that a lot of times our communities go uninformed, because unless they're seeing somebody like Sala and I are sitting in a therapist office or attending these types of conversations, oftentimes these conversations or these community presentations are often come at a cost. But we are grateful that we have our community sponsors to be able to sponsor these events. So again, thank you. So that being said, my name is Scarlett Ekiroma. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and boundaries coach. I've been in this field for over a decade. I currently work through my private practice, Elevate Healing. Not only do I see my amazing clients through my private practice, but I get to do this great community work alongside my partner in crime, Sala. And we've been running this and doing these community conversations for a minute, a long minute. And we're going to continue to do these classes until you all say, please do something else. So until then, we're just going to continue to do these. So again, just a reminder of the housekeeping rules. Please keep your questions and communication relevant to tonight's community conversation, running away a two-part discussion for parents and teens. So I'm going to go ahead and set up, and then we will go from there.
And as Scarlett is getting that going for us, if you are in the Zoom, and you will notice in the chat, we always, with all of our community conversation, we always post sort of what we call a little cheat sheet. So it's kind of like a summary of everything that we talk about in every conversation that we have. So feel free to download that so you can have that at your disposal. And also, I think Celi's going to be able to post that event summary in our Facebook link, and then we'll also maybe link it to our YouTube if it's possible. But there's an event summary in our comment section in the chat.
Awesome. Can you see my screen? Are we good? Cool beans. So again, welcome to tonight's community conversation, Running Away, a two-part discussion for parents and teens. We know that this topic is a highly sensitive and heavy topic for some who may be in attendance, whether in the Zoom room or Facebook or YouTube Live. And we know, even for those who are watching the replay, and we just want to encourage you throughout this community conversation, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask, because your question may be helpful to someone who is here tonight, or again, who is rewatching. As a general reminder, if you leave tonight's community conversation and you still have a question or you are seeking additional resources than what we share, please don't hesitate to reach out to Sala and I so that we may assist. And again, this community conversation is in hopes that we can bridge the communication gap or conversation gap that we have seen amongst our teens and youth and their support system. So like Sala said, there's two parts. In part one of the agenda, we will be going over, it will be geared more towards the teens and identifying important factors regarding teens and running away. And then part two is geared more towards the parents, which will be run by Sala, and assisting the parents with challenges regarding tonight's community conversation. So you don't have, and also again, you don't have to wait to ask, just put it in the chat or just raise your hand and unmute yourself. And thus, that same goes for those who are in the Zoom room as well. All right, so here is our part one agenda for tonight. So we're going to, one of the things we always love to give is some stats that affect, in particularly in every community conversation that we do. And we explore the reasons for running away, possible warning signs, and we are always going to talk about feelings in regards to every community conversation we do, because it is such an important conversation. Of course, we're going to review why it's important to identify and share. So, excuse me. So here's some quick stats. So this is from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children as of 2023, which was last year. About 1.5 million teens, children run away per year. And again, these stats are in regards to the ages of 10 to 18-year-olds. 91% are considered endangered runaways, and an endangered runaway is defined as someone under the age of 18 and who is missing, and their whereabouts are unknown to the parents or legal guardians. And about 77% of the 1.5 million children or teens who run away are between the ages of 15 and 17 years old. So let's go over some potential risk factors of possibly why somebody could that affect runaways. Homelessness is one, food and housing insecurities, multi-generational households. That I always like putting that statistic because, of course, that is very prevalent in our AA and HPI communities, living in multi-generational household, because there is an increased responsibilities, divorce and family separations, language barriers, or undiagnosed mental health conditions. Of those 1.5 runaways, 87% have reported at least one risk factor, and 62% have reported having two or more risk factors. I think an interesting statistic that I saw the other day, as of 2022, in regards to the risk factor, homelessness affects about 4.2 million youth and young adults. And I was just like, that's pretty high, and it also made me sad and worrisome again, because it's like there are so many factors that are affecting our youth. And of course, other potential factors that are not listed on here but are on the summary is child sex trafficking, gang activity. And I always put those two because oftentimes for youth and teens, oftentimes they tend to go to those areas because for them, it provides a sense of belonging and connectedness, unfortunately. Other risk factors are a lack of acceptance. And the one thing I didn't consider, which I read about, was that sometimes there's a medical or developmental disability that are other potential risk factors. And then sometimes other potential risk factors is to be with her friends, be with a romantic partner, or pregnancy. So just kind of want to let that marinate a little bit. Does anybody have any comments? And Sala, if you'd like to add anything, please do so. We good?
Yep, we're good. I think in my own experience as a therapist, I've definitely come across the runaway teens where the risk factor was the domestic violence in the home.
Yeah.
And so this could be, the parents are arguing a lot. And so maybe the father or the mom is like, moving out, but then coming back because they're trying to work it out. And so every time they come back, and then of course could be alcohol involved, or and so that absolutely, increases the risk of teens running away. Because if you think about it, these teens, they're already experiencing so much in their own development. Like just as a teenager, you think about that stage of development in their lives, like there's so much that they're going through in their own lives and their bodies that's developing. Mm-hmm. And so to add that factor of, not being able to have those secure attachment with their caregivers is really unsettling. Because then if there's so much chaos in the home, this kid or this teen is not going to feel safe. It's going to be at least, the ones I was working with, they wanted to be anywhere else but home.
Yeah.
Because of the chaos that was ensuing in the home.
And that's why you and I were strategic in regards to how we put the order of our community classes. So for example, the know your feelings and what's underneath your anger, how we can start talking about those things effectively. Because in this stage, like you said, for teens, a big thing is identity, and so a lot of times they want to find their identity. And if they go towards the wrong things, that's what they will gravitate towards, because someone has said, come out, I will accept you. And most likely in this situation, it is a highly negative situation that occurs. So thanks for sharing that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Celia, I saw you unmuted.
In the chat box, Matthew said influenced by friends and wanting the freedom that the other friends have as a risk factor.
Or perceived, oftentimes it's perceived freedom. Yeah. So because a lot of times what happens is teens are not really effectively clear in communication in regard of what's going on. They just see the freedom, but that's a perceived freedom of what a friend is saying, because otherwise there's always rules somewhere.
Not only that, I think it also kind of falls into what I will talk about later on, and the different types of runaways. So I'm gonna go into that a little bit more when we get there. But the one that Celie was talking about, like, just kind of running away because I can see, my friends are having the freedom that they want. So it just falls into a different category that I'll later talk about in my section.
Yeah. And even if I think about like my teenage years and the perception that I thought my friends had freedom. As I started to see like how it went, it was just like they actually don't have the same freedom that this perceive, like I said, it's a perceived freedom that I thought that they had, but it's actually like, no, they still had rules that they had to abide by because I was just trying not to do nothing. But that's not how it was in the case for my friends as well. So so I want to talk a little bit about does anybody have anything to add? I don't want to be rude. Are we good? If not, it's okay. And if you want to put it in the chat, if you're in the Zoom room or Facebook, YouTube, please put it in the chats and we will get to it. So here, let's explore some reasons why teens are running away. And so oftentimes, just in summary, it's a lot of unsafe environments. So it's abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, mental, or emotional. A lot of what I've seen in regards to being in my private practice when I used to work with teens was a lot of stress and conflict with parents. So it was a lot of feeling misunderstood or not heard that caused either mental or emotional challenges, unsafe neighborhoods, so there's drug use and high criminal activity. And there was pressure, whether it was home, culture, school, or friends. In this sense of pressure, peer pressure, and unfortunately for our teens nowadays, peer pressure and social media highly affect and influence a teen or youth. So those are some of the reasons why possibly a teen could run away. So Sal, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just that in my experience as well, it's mainly the stress conflict with parents. And then also I did see the ones that I did see for abuse was for trauma treatment. So yes, it makes sense, like the different kinds of abuse that they've had to endure, whether in the home or outside of the home. But I think another one that we can add in there probably falls under, could be under pressure, would be relationships. Because you think about like the teenage years, this is when it's like, man, it's me and my boo,
or like
it's me and my boo against the world. It's like it's me and my boo against the world, and it's like you don't want to listen to anybody, you don't want to. So there's a lot of that influence that's also going on, and also could be some of the reasons as well, like depending on like those really strong relationship ties, romantic relationship wise, could also be a factor as well.
Yeah, because I think like in this, like we said, like identity is such a big, it's in this part of teens. And so, for example, if somebody's always going to keep feeding your ego, of course you're going to gravitate towards that. So it's just like, yeah, man, you don't need to accept that. You don't need that. And so it's just like, but we have to sit with the reason why our parents are telling us something oftentimes, and it's not always to go against you, and it's a lot of times, and that's why we talk about the importance of effective communication and listening effectively as well. So just wanted to open the space if anybody has any comments or any questions, and then let me know if we need to address anything in the chat too as well. Good. All right. So that being said, let's talk about some possible warning signs. So again, these are signs that you, teen or youth, might be considering running away. And I wanted to address these things because, oftentimes we're unaware of the behaviors that a teen may be doing. And so again, if you are in the Zoom room, there is the event summary that these will be listed on there as well. So possible warning sign number 1 is behavioral changes. So there is an increase in negative behaviors that they are exhibiting. Oftentimes I tell parents in this sense to really pay attention to vocal tone and body language. So for example, there can be sudden mood changes, frequent irritability or anger, extreme sadness or withdrawal. There also may be a change in routine. So for example, they're disinterested in activities that they used to enjoy. And then there may be a decline in academic or performance or skipping school. And often the big one is in this one, behavioral changes, there's a lot of secretive behavior. So there's increased privacy, locking the doors, hiding the phone, or hiding stuff on your computer, whatever electronic device that they're using. Oftentimes there can be unexplained phone calls or messages that they're just like answering and hiding and going away. So those are some of the behavioral changes that may be exhibited. Next is sudden or unexpected withdrawal from family or friends. So oftentimes they're highly isolated. They're spending more time alone in their room. In this phase, they're highly defensive. They can be highly offensive, again, avoiding family meals and activities. And then possibly there also is a change in their social circle. So there may be new friends you haven't met, and they're distancing from longtime friends or their support system. Another possible warning signs, they actually talk about or make plans to run away. Oftentimes we think that they don't talk about it. They will, whether they mention it just casually, or they actually say like, I feel like running away. And they often will express in this that they feel either trapped, hopeless, or misunderstood. They plan. So they will gather money, they will gather possessions without a clear reason, and then they will research locations or shelters or survival tips of running away. Oftentimes there's a change in appearance where they will pack a bag, hide clothes or supplies. And then there's a dramatic change in their appearance of style of how you're used to their dressing, and as a part of this new identity that they are expressing. Next is some of the emotional and psychological signs. So we will be having a class, I think it's our next class, where we will be going into more depth about depression and anxiety. So depression and anxiety symptoms. So in this sense, it is an increase in anxiety or depressive symptoms. So there is a sign of severe stress or mental health struggle. Oftentimes they will express self-harm or suicidal ideation. They don't feel supported or they feel unheard, frequently saying no one understands them. So again, it's that common feeling like they're misunderstood. And oftentimes these signs, their perception of their concerns are minimized, dismissed, or ignored. And then lastly, negative influence. Peer pressure plays a big role in this. Oftentimes influence can come from friends and family. I always want to include the family part because sometimes there are family members who do influence it, who have either run away or suggested as an option. They engage in risky behaviors that their friends say to do or their peers say to do. They often will view online content that romanticizes or glorifies running away. And then lastly, they participate in online forums or again, any social media groups that discuss running away. So again, these are possible warning signs in regards to why your teen or youth might be considered running away. So any questions, any comments? And then Sala, if there's anything you'd like to add as well.
I think it just like going back to what you said about the negative influences, and I think especially with this generation where it seems like they're mainly on like social media, right? And so I see how, we see it all the time where it's like, the influence of social media on, people connecting with other people on social media, and, next thing you know, your teen is thinking that they're talking to another teen somewhere, and they're talking about meeting up, and there's all of these things that could, that again, some of it could also lead into what Scarlett was talking about earlier with sex trafficking, and all of those things. And I think it's all of these warning signs. It's not to scare us as parents or as caregivers, but it's one of those things that and this is by no means an exhaustive list of, warning signs. I think these are just some of the main ones that Scarlett is pointing out just for us to be aware of. But it's one of those things where it's good to talk about, because this is like one of those topics that's kind of like, like really kind of difficult to talk about.
Yeah.
But this is why we want to have these conversations, is so we can hopefully bridge the gap between parents and their young people and say, hey, we can't just talk to the young people and say, well, why do you feel like running away? Or, because it's like the parents, like you have to also consider what your part in this as well. So I think this is a really good, just a good synopsis of like, what to kind of look out for, if our teens start, is starting to, like, their behavior is changing, or they're starting to, isolate themselves, and you never know where all of these influences could be coming from. But again, I think as parents, you have, or you ought to have, sort of that baseline understanding or view of how your teens usually behave, like their norm. If you have a relationship with them, you probably have an understanding of like some kind of a baseline of how your teens usually operate, that once they respond in like in a certain way, and you're just like, well, that's kind of out of the norm. Like, it doesn't, you never do that. Why do you do that? Like, be curious. If you're able to like if you know about these, is like, just be curious. Like, okay, I can see that they're not doing this. They usually don't do that. I wonder why they're doing this. Like, be more aware and be more in tune to what your teens are doing.
For sure. So, question in the chat is, how has culture pushed the envelope that influence or pressure are on PI, our Pacific Island youth? Sala just mentioned the generation gap. So I'll answer it first, and then Sala, you can chime in. I think in regards to culture, oftentimes I'll answer it this way. Oftentimes our culture is not really big on talking about challenging matters. And so oftentimes it goes unspoken or unsaid. And oftentimes what I have in particularly seen is especially with the Pacific Island families that I've worked with, is that they just didn't really have the skills or know how to talk about these things. So again, it's how do we teach the PI youth in the Pacific Island community, or just the AA-NHPI community, that how to talk about these challenging things, and that it's okay to talk about these things. So that's what I would say in regards to the culture, how it influences or pressure. And then Patrick, let me know if that answers your question as well. And then Sala, you can chime in as well on that.
Yeah. So I think how culture sort of pushes that envelope and, kind of pressure our PI youth is, you think about, and when I say the generation gap, you think about your first, second generation, immigrant parents that moved here, and maybe they're really, really stuck on the traditional cultural ways of doing things. And we see this all the time, where the parents or the grandparents are really wanting that traditional way of doing things, and, for their kids to carry on those traditions. However, their kids being raised here in the States, they're already sort of, in their own way, acculturated and assimilated into the dominant, Americanized culture, to where it's very individualistic. So here we are with the parents and the grandparents and their generation that's wanting all the traditional ways of doing things. But then you have this younger generation that's just kind of like, I don't really understand the language. I don't really understand why we have to give money. I don't really understand why we have to do all of these things, and we have to, so there's like a lot of that misunderstanding, not only because of language barrier, but other things as well, that just keeps, being miscommunicated from the parents to their kids, or to the kids to their parents. And oftentimes we do get that a lot, like with our young people sitting across from us. And their thing is, they're just trying to understand like how their parents can just listen to them, because sometimes the parents in the culture, it's like, I'm the parent, I'm the adult, whatever I say, you do, you just listen. And you do what I tell you to do, because that's just how it is. but we have the kids that are kind of assimilated into the dominant culture, and they're asking questions, they're being curious. They're like, but why do we do that? And it's like, because I said so. So there's always, a lot of those moments where the parents and the kids just keep missing each other. Could be of language barrier, could be of other things, but I would say like the theme around that would be just, I think more so the parents or the grandparents like really wanting the kids to stick with the traditional ways of doing things, the cultural ways of doing things. But the kids are, in a way, a little bit removed from culture, that they try to, but they're not really sort of buying into it. And so because they want their independence, they want to do things differently, they're asking questions. And so there's always that sort of like miscommunication layer that goes on between parents and their kids. So I think hopefully that addresses your question, Patrick.
I think just to add on what you said, Sala, is like one of the things I encourage parents is like when their kids ask why, I'm like, one of the great things I love, especially with Pacific Island culture, is like we're storytellers. Like tell a story, share a story of the reason why it's important to continue these traditions and what the story was said to you, because that will clear up a lot of the curiosity for teens or youth that they have. So that's the only thing I would add to that.
Yeah. So I remember working with a client. She was a, Chinese young woman that wanted to go into a different career plan. I think I want to say like engineering or something like that. Mm-hmm. But her parents really wanted her and, have been sort of bringing her up to take a different career plan. And so, she was going in a different career plan. Her parents wanted her to go to a different, career plan. And ever since she's made that decision to just do what she wanted to do, there's always been a conflict, with her parents when it comes to like family gatherings or things like that, where she felt, the disapproval of her dad and things like that. So just the subtle things that dad and mom says during the Christmas dinner or something like that. But she knows where that's coming from. And it's from, from what she decided to do. So even just doing what I want to do and not doing what my parents want to do, so kind of going against family and going against culture. And so we see that a lot as well, and trying to like, okay, well then how do we navigate this conversation between where you can understand where your parents are coming from and at the same time be able to communicate with them what you are going through as well.
Absolutely. Love that. Because we have plenty of stories of going against tradition, especially on my end. So we'll get that into another time. But any other questions, any other comments before we press forward? Good. Cool. All right. So again, my favorite topic, feelings. It's always we always include some type of feeling orientation in all these community conversations, because it often goes unsaid, and what in regards to how we're feeling, and we want to continue to emphasize the importance of sharing. Of course, in our previous community conversations, especially in particular the Know Your Feelings conversation, we talked about how to identify your feelings and how to identify an emotionally safe person. So if you would like to know that, please rewatch that. You can rewatch it on Big UCE Radio's Facebook or their YouTube page. So again, feelings are important. So big thing that we want to talk about in here is the difference between escape versus addressing. Oftentimes in this sense, I tell the teens and I talk with parents about like, you have to be comfortable addressing all feelings, positive and negative. It isn't, especially when it comes to the negative feelings, because those are the things that we often withhold, especially when we're talking about teens and youth. They often withhold and they share it oftentimes with somebody who is emotionally unsafe. So in this sense, oftentimes I encourage parents and even teens to it's okay. It's important to initiate the conversation. And the biggest thing when we're talking about addressing our feelings is being emotionally safe. And one of those is being able to talk calmly so that the person who is talking can express their concerns or feelings, they feel safe to express them. Next is research reveals talking about your feelings reduces the intensity and is relieving. Big thing is what I always tell teens, and I always tell parents too, it is important not to dismiss your feelings and to validate and acknowledge your feelings. Acknowledging is such a huge part because it is a big part that plays in reducing the intensity and with the relief of whatever you're feeling. Next is they don't disappear if you don't talk about them. It's a buildup. So what we've talked about before in our previous class is oftentimes when we don't talk about our feelings, we put it in this makeshift or imaginative emotional closet. And oftentimes we stuff it in there. And one day, if you keep stuffing it in, one day the door is not going to close anymore. And immediately when you start stuffing things in the closet, you're already exhibiting a negative behavior, which is you are dismissing your own feelings. Next is sharing your feelings is important because it helps you and others understand you better, and it recognizes you're not alone. Again, oftentimes we don't share because we are unaware of how to, or we can feel embarrassed or feel shame or guilt. But again, in this sense, it's important to share so that you don't feel alone. People often feel if they share their feelings, it's going to make it worse. But again, research actually reveals when you talk about it, it helps with relief and reducing the intensity. Oftentimes what I've come across teens, again, it's that whole like, my parents they don't understand, they're not going to get it. And oftentimes I would ask them, I go, have you at least tried? And they just didn't try. And I said, how about we try it? And I said, but let's talk about what you actually need in this space in order for you to continuously share when I'm not in the room with you all. So we often go over what they need. And oftentimes I have to talk with the parents about sometimes the fix is not actually doing anything. Sometimes the fix is just listening to what your child has to share. Because we've shown the video before, as long as you give the feelings a space to air, it helps with reducing the intensity of it and helps with relief. So any questions, any comments, and Sala, if you wanted to add anything onto that?
Just that acknowledgement is huge. All you gotta do is just give your feelings a space to be expressed. Like just be acknowledged. That's it. Seeing clients a couple hours ago and just had to share the same thing as about it is stuffing things in your emotional closet, because one day that emotional closet, everything is just going to come bursting out. And so if you just whatever feeling comes up for you, like express it in the moment, find a way to express it in a moment in a constructive way, not a destructive way, but in a constructive way. So just acknowledging what Scarlett said, it is huge in and of itself. But a lot of times everybody, like as soon as they start to feel uncomfortable because they are experiencing a feeling that is uncomfortable, then they avoid it, they push it down, they stuff it down, they suppress it, or they ignore it, or they try to busy themselves so they don't feel it, But there's only one way, to be able to get through that, and it is just to be able to sit in your feelings. So that's really, really important.
For sure. And like sitting with it and as we've talked about it before, actually identifying what is going on so that you can share it. One of the examples I've given before is that I don't know what's going on with Sala unless she informs me of how she's feeling. I can't share with Sala how I'm feeling unless I actually know how I'm feeling. So that's in that time we have to sit with it, because sitting with it is part of the acknowledgement. So for example, it's like, oh man, I don't know how I'm feeling. Let me just sit with it for a minute. That's acknowledging it. You're acknowledging to yourself, like, I got to figure out what's going on. Again, the other thing, and we'll talk about it, we have some tips in here about how to start sharing your feelings healthily, which we'll show at the end, about how to do that. One of the things we've shared is use the feelings wheel. Again, I've been in this field for over a decade. I still use the feelings wheel, and you have to use the resources that are available to you. So again, It's always important to identify and share what's going on, because again, to help reduce the intensity. And the big thing I always tell teens is because so that you don't feel like you're alone, because oftentimes even adults feel like that. Oftentimes they feel like they're the only ones experiencing whatever they're experiencing. They're the only ones feeling whatever they're experiencing. And it's like, that's not true. So if you actually talk about it, it does make it better. Any questions, any comments before we press forward? We good in the chats? Cool, cool. All right. I will pass it on over to Sala so she can continue our conversation.
All right. So as we talked about earlier in the beginning of this conversation, it's a two-part, right? And so the first part, Scarlett's talking about really the focus is on our teens, is on our young people. And so this second part, we hope to sort of engage with the parents and hopefully share some things with the parents. For this second part of the conversation, I'll just be sharing on the different types of runaways. It's become so common that they've categorized it in these two types of runaways. Also be sharing different ways that we can hopefully, as parents, be able to minimize the risks of our teens running away. And then let's say we've, tried everything within our control to do and within our power to do to be able to minimize the risk of our own kids running away or when they go through things. And let's say your teenager still runs away. So we'll be talking about that, like what are we going to do as parents? It'll be very practical. So your teen leaves, they still run away. What are you going to do as a parent? So I'll be going over some of the practical things that we can do, and then also walking you through, well, now let's say your teen leaves and ends up coming back. Your teen returns home. And those moments are very, very crucial moments because there's going to be so much emotions. And so also would like to walk you through how to be able to handle those moments, give you some practical tips on how to be able to work through those moments. And then how do we come together as a parents and as your teen? How do we bridge that gap? And then Scarlett's going to finish this off with how to start sharing the feelings, your feelings healthily. She did an amazing job in just talking about giving you a little bit of overview of the importance of like why you need to share and express your emotions and not keep them, suppressed or not keep them to yourself. Like just to be able to acknowledge your emotions does a whole lot. Like it reduces the intensity of what it is that you are experiencing. So that's what we'll be covering in this second part. We usually like to give kind of a lay of the land of what we'll be talking about so that you know what to expect coming up. All right, but before we go on, parents, you are not alone. If you recall what Scarlett was talking about earlier, I think she mentioned the statistics that over 2 million youths run away from home each year. So if you are a parent to a youth that ran away or maybe threatens to run away, and you're tuning in tonight, or maybe you are tuning in after the recording is live, just know that you're not alone, because there can be so much stigma associated with this in our communities. Whenever like a young person run away, and there's always that stigma, those perception of like, oh, I wonder what happened, like from people that you may know, friends, family, co-workers, like, oh, I wonder what happened in their family, so there's a lot of shame that parents can feel when their teens run away. They can feel a lot of shame, they can feel a lot of guilt, they can feel like like they did a bad job, they did a horrible job. There could be a lot of blame. You could be, as a parent, you could be considering other people's perception of the situation and taking that into account. And at the same time, you could be feeling absolutely powerless in those moments because there's absolutely nothing you feel like you can do. So we always want to affirm our parents. Just know that, if you are a parent of a youth that run away or maybe threatened to run away, or just know that you're not alone. Just know that you are not alone.
The thing I just want to add is for the parents is lean on your support system, and especially during this time. Is just to literally fight through or navigate through, like Sala said, the embarrassment, the guilt, the shame, or the powerlessness that you may feel. Because when we lean on our communities, that's what they're there for, to help us through these challenging times as well. So that's what I want to add.
For sure. You can go next one. So earlier I talked about the different types of runaway. So there's episodic runaways and there's chronic runaways. So episodic runaways are pretty much, these are your teenagers that leave home whenever there's a triggering event, and that it just does it makes them want to run away. Like something happens, like there's some kind of a triggering event. So this could be a one-off type of runaway, or this could be, you know, a two-off type of runaway where something specifically happened and the teen ran away. So that's what you would call episodic runaway. Chronic runaways are teenagers who sort of manipulates their parents or their guardians by threatening them to run away. And usually, you know, they would either go to their friends that are a lot more sympathetic to their cause, or even like what Scarlett had mentioned earlier, like sometimes they'll run away to their family and be like, you know, oh, you know, my mom, you know, said this and that and this and that, and they're telling me I'm everything, right? They're going and telling their family members or their friends maybe one side of the story, and at the same time, like not considering like maybe what the parents' side of the story is as well. And these are also your teens that will keep going back to, or these are also your teens that, like, if things don't work out, or maybe there's not a lot of like resources in the areas, they like the professional services will end up taking them back to their homes, you know, which is, it's like, in a way it's kind of unsafe, you know, because you never know what situations in these homes that these kids were running away from. And so if we don't have those resources in place, sometimes when the like authorities are involved or when social services are involved, more than likely they'll just find them and take them back home and sort of investigate what is going on. But these are your most common types of runaways that they've categorized as episodic runaways and chronic runaways. Any questions or comments or anything you want to add to that as well, Scarlett?
I'm just gonna put what you notated in the notes in regards to, like, again, so remember that some of the risk factors in regards to these two types of runaways is what we mentioned earlier. There could be physical, sexual, or emotional abuse in the home, being bullied at school, only having at least one authoritative parent in the home. There may be substance abuse or substance addiction, and that's either the teen or parent, or they could be doing it together, because I have seen that in this field as well.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Unfortunately, and again, what we talked about earlier is housing and food insecurities that may be contributing to these two types of runaways. Yes.
Yep. So pretty much like what Scarlett had mentioned earlier in her notes, as well as some of the risk factors of why some of these teens would run away. This all falls under the same category of just like, but I think like the difference in between episodic and chronic runaways is like, episodic is like when a specific event happens, a teen, you know, wants to run away. For chronic runaways, sometimes it's more often like the teens that manipulates their parents or guardians, threatening to run away. And again, like, I think some of the risk factors are still the same, and what some of these ones have in common as well.
Yeah, I would say, like, in regards to the teens who often manipulate in regards to the chronic runaways, there's oftentimes what we have seen in this field, when we see these clients, and you probably can confirm this, is like there's a power struggle within the household. And so that's why it's manipulative, because they were like, well, if you're just going to do that, I'm just going to run away anyways. So then we start kowtowing to our kids so that they don't run away. So again, it becomes a power struggle in the house. So that's just what I wanted to add onto that.
Yeah. Or I've also seen it to where the kids have used it, unfortunately, have used it like whenever their parents are talking about divorce
Oh
or
yeah.
talking about
Like
separation,
guilty.
things like that, or when there's a lot of like maybe conflict in the home between the parents, or they're arguing, or there's domestic violence probably that's involved. And of course, like the teens, like this is where it's like, oh, if you guys don't stop this, if you guys don't get back together, I might as well go live somewhere else, and so they'll threaten in that way, to be able to like, get away. I think in the best sense, like, these young people, they are trying to maybe deal with things the best way they think that they think will help, when in essence it just ends up, it's really an unsafe thing for them to do.
Yeah, because oftentimes when we talk with teens, the one things that we always talk about is the choice that you make and how that affects you, not just you, but everything that you are attached to.
Yeah.
So again, all those social things and family and friends,
Right.
all of that affects when you decide to do when a teen decides to run.
For sure. So how can we minimize the risk of our teens from running away? And so again, these are not an exhaustive list of everything that we can do to try and minimize. We can try all of these things and something might still happen. But one of the things we always say is make sure that you're connecting with your teenager. Make sure that you're connecting with your kid. One of the podcasts I listened to, and I think is called Dr. Deloney, but he said something that always stuck with me. And he says that, discipline without relationship equals rebellion. So you take this, like when you're disciplined, when all you're doing is just giving your kids discipline, taking their Xbox away, whatever it is, all you're doing is disciplining them, but you don't have a relationship with them. I think they're more likely going to be able to, not listen or be able to rebel, versus if you have a connection with your teen, if you have some kind of a relationship with them, do you know their friends? Do you know what they like and what they don't like? Do you ask them, how often do you spend quality time with them to, maybe ask them about their day at school and how that went? What are some different ways that you can connect with your teen? Are you up to date with maybe the kind of music that they're listening to? What are some of the, maybe foods that they like these days? Because it changes. And you might still be thinking, oh, I know what they like. They like pizza. That baby is like 17 years old. And right now they got like a taste for steak, like prime ribs or something, it's changed, so it's like, make sure that you're up to date, because just as you are changing as a parent, as a human being, like, every single day, every year, your teenager is changing as well. So how can you as a parent be able to find different ways to just keep connecting with your teenager? Just get to know them. One thing we recommend is also like try reframing your teen's situation. Like if they're going through things and they're coming to you and they like, maybe they're like going through a situation where it's like really bad and they're just venting to you about it, or they're feeling depressed about it, they're feeling anxious about taking tests. How can you reframe? And this is a skill that we use quite a lot in therapy, is we are trying to challenge people to change how they usually think about their situation. That's all reframing is. Reframing is, how can I get you to think differently about your situation? So if your teen is maybe coming to you and they're experiencing a breakup in a relationship or something, how can you find that connection with them and reframe how they're thinking about their situation? Because they're probably thinking, I'll never find anyone that will love me. I will never find another one that's so handsome like this. So, like whatever it is that they're, coming to you for, like, how can you find a way to just maybe change how they're thinking about their situation? Because sometimes even those things like breakups and relationship can really send them on a negative spiral of one negative thought after another, after another, after another. Next thing you know, they have convinced themselves to run away with this person, with this other teen, because they believe that they are meant to be for life. And we all know that's like, it's probably like puppy love, you know, teen love. That's what it is. It's like Twilight. So, but you know, as parents and as adults, like sometimes we understand that, but when your teenagers are coming to you with something like that, like how can you help them and be able to change or reframe how they're thinking about things? Sometimes too, like it's even asking questions like, you know, like if you see them worrying about an exam or worrying about something, anxiety about something, you can ask them a lot of open-ended questions. Sometimes it's a question like, what are you worried about? You know, and then this is how you're starting to get them to change how they think. Okay, how likely is it that, you know, what you worry about is going to come true? You know, these are just like open-ended questions that you can just ask your teen just to get them engaging and just to be able to like, okay, how can you think differently about whatever it is that you're going through? So reframing. Then also being able to recognize when your teen is in trouble, like Scarlett had talked about earlier, like recognizing those risk factors, right? Like I said, you are, as a parent, if you have that relationship and understanding with your kid, you know your kid, you kind of understand like how they usually are, like on that baseline. You have an understanding of like how your kid usually is operating like on a baseline, that whenever something is amiss, your radars are going off and you're like, wait a minute, like you usually don't do this. This is odd behavior. So, you know, tune into those things. Recognize when your teen, don't just, you know, dismiss it and be like, oh, maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's nothing. Because when you dismiss one thing and then you dismiss another thing, and those things build up, and you don't know how those things are kind of piling up together in their lives, right? So as soon as you recognize, you know, when your teen is in trouble, you recognize those signs, address it. Address it with your teen, bring it up to them, talk to them. And as you do that, you are connecting with them. You are connecting with them and you continue to build that relationship. And then also seeking professional help, and professional help can look like therapy. It can look like seeing somebody like Scarlett and I. If you feel like, oh my gosh, like my daughter has been feeling this way for 2 weeks now. And she's still doing this. She's still not coming out of her room. She's still not eating. She's still like, you know, kind of waiting by the phone for her ex to call or something like that. And if you feel like it's like, okay, this is way beyond something that I can do as a parent, seek professional help. This is where you get to contact somebody like Scarlett and I that are able to kind of, you know, be able to help your teen in whatever it is that they're going through. And then lastly, like as parents, you need to do self-care as well. Because when it'll be really, really difficult for you to be able to tune into your kids and connect with your teen and be able to really, you know, help them change how they're thinking about things when you are, you know, feeling depleted. It'll be really, really hard for you to do all of these things. If you as the adult in that home, if you as the parent, if you as the caregiver is operating on fumes, it'll be really hard. And so we recommend that you also take care of yourself as a parent. That's really, really, you know, something that is important to do because, and we say this in all of our other community conversation, when you take care of yourself, that's the more you take care of yourself, you're better able to take care of other people in your life as well. So doing self-care, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a grand family vacation. It doesn't have to be going to get your nails done, but if it is getting your nails done, do that. It can be, you know, simple things. And we usually in our other class, we have 50 ways to take a break. You know, those things, you don't even need money. You can just like, you know, do one of those activities. And that's something that contributes to your self-care. Maybe we'll link that one at the end of the conversation tonight anyways, but just want to pause here. If anybody, maybe, you know, there are some things that you feel like you are able to do as a parent and it's been working well for you, you're more than welcome to share it tonight as well. Do we have any comments or questions?
Go ahead, Celia. I saw you had a question.
Yeah, I just had a quick question relative to that. Thanks, Sala. But I get teased all the time, right? Being too friendly with my kids. But like, how do you guys strike the balance of like, you know, listening to them, and then you're also the parent, right? At some point, you got a parent. But I get my kids every other weekend, so they just kick it. But yeah, that that's an actual like real question and concern of as you're unpacking this. They're sharing their truth or their life with you, but yeah, that was one of the things that comes up a lot for me when I think of, all right, that's terrible. Like, hey, I am still your dad. Yeah, you had any advice or what has worked in your practice? Or yeah, stop.
It's a good question, Celia. Um, I think just based on just what you said, I would, if they're sharing something, I would ask them, it's just like, tell me what you're needing right now, like in this space. You shared that with me. But then also you could still be the parent. It's just like, but I'm also going to tell you my concern about what you just said as well. And just being honest about it, because it's okay to give a space, but there's also a point where you can share how you're experiencing what they're sharing as well. So it's just like, you know what? I'm concerned because what you just said, I don't think that's the best choice. Here's why. Here's the reasons why. So that's the parenting part of it. But it's still leaving that open space for a dialogue and a conversation, because what you're talking like is just like what Sala was talking about. Like, that's one way to help connect with your teen and reframe as well.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, I just don't want to come down heavy-handed, right? Because, I have a pretty open relationship with my kids. They tell me a lot of things, but if I hear something, I'm like, hey, you guys are doing what? And then again, the shields come up and like, oh, if that dude is my dad, probably shouldn't tell him that, but still try to stay open, right? To be a good conversationalist, but also just generally concerned about how some of these young folks think, right? Very different from us, but still, because they have a lot more access to things that we didn't, right? If a lot of that existed when I was a kid, man, we would have had a different narrative. But yeah,
But I still
that's
think,
helpful.
yeah, I still also, part of that you can add onto that, Celia, is just like, my first and foremost duty is to protect you as your father. So I have to do what I feel is best in order to protect you. You may not agree with it, but this is the reason why I'm doing it, is to make you feel safe and protected. Because oftentimes kids don't think about that. They think whatever idea they have is the greatest idea ever. And it's like, well, let's talk about it. Let's actually, navigate through this.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what Scarlett said. And I absolutely agree with her as well. Only thing I would add is like, it's also okay to be a little bit heavy-handed as a parent. It's also okay to do that, because I think that's also what distinguishes us as parent from that friend, because that friend role is, we just gonna be okay with everything. I'm gonna just affirm everything you say and do, and we cool like that. But at the same time, like, no, I understand that, like, we can have that open relationship, but at the same time, I still want you to know that there is still a line there, and I am mom. So yeah, it's okay, you can be open, but at the same time, like, there's still a boundary there. And so it's okay to be that bit of like heavy-handed when you're like, okay, wait, what did you just say? No, you guys shouldn't say that, like, it was like, I think that was you sort of like, kind of like, knowing that, like, that's that boundary that's there. Like, yes, like, I'm cool dad, and we have this open relationship, but at the same time, I'm also the adult in this relationship. I'm also parent. That's a whole different role. So I think it's also okay to be able to do that if that's, if that's what if that's what you want. And, I absolutely do the same thing. And I'm just like, yes, I have that open relationship with my boys. And at the same time, like, not too open to the point where you're gonna get real comfortable and just saying just about everything. I'm just like, yeah, don't get it twisted. You know, so I still have to put that boundary down as a parent, you know. So it's like, yes, they'll talk to me about things, and at the same time they know well enough to know that's like, okay, she's still mom, she's still parent.
Yeah, because it's really trying to use some of these strategies and tools, right? Because you know, I'm a divorced parent, I said that, but when they're frustrated with their, you know, side with being with their mom, right? It's trying to be allies with her, but still address their concerns. And it's like, yeah, run away to my house. You might have to go back home though.
Yeah.
But trying to, again, as you said, open that dialogue. But I like how you put that. Just yeah, it's helpful. Thank you.
So question in the chat, Sala, is what about teens that run away who actually need help but fall through the system cracks?
Yeah, that's tough. That's really tough because, like, you know, when the teens do run away, I think like later on I'll get to share, like, you know, some resources that, you know, teens that do run away are able to utilize out on the streets, you know, contacting, and so they can get information and things like that. But when they do fall through the system, like, that's a bigger issue than even I could even address, you know. All I know is, like, even though we do have our social services that are out there, and a lot of these different, you know, agencies that are supposed to be sort of that net, right, to catch and be able to, like, point our kids to, if their homes are not safe, then we're putting them in the system. But then of course it's like, as we know, it's like sometimes like that system is also a broken one. It's like, doesn't mean that the kids are safe when they go in the system. So it's really a tough one. You know, I would just want to point them to the direction of all of the services, as far as like the social services, the agencies and things like that. But if it's a teen that is like, I absolutely don't want to be in the system, and I'm just living, you know, couch surfing in my friends, you know, my friend's family home and things like that, that's also different. But yeah, that's a tough one to address.
Yeah,
sure.
and I used to work in the foster care system. I was a group home manager, and the thing that, because they were episodic, or not episodic, they were chronic runaways. And so oftentimes the only thing when we were working there that we were able to do is really just teach them life skills. And it's like cooking, washing their clothes, how to have a conversation. And it even went down to like, how do you brush your hair? How do you actually wash your body? Because those were the things that they were not taught. So that, being a part of that system, that was the way that we help deter some of the issues that we had seen when we had the chronic runaways in that would come to the group home. But it is a tough challenge in regards to the system cracks. So hopefully, Emma, that answers your question. If not, please let us know. And if it does, please let us know as well.
Good questions.
Good question.
And I saw there was a comment in the chat from Patrick, our fluent Samoan. Sala probably should read it, but it looks like agreed. Our duty.
Yes.
Oh yeah, to teach and be an example.
Direct our kids. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Yeah, great engagement. Absolutely. So let's say, you know, we just talked about, you know, how can we minimize the risk of our teens from running away? You know, so let's say we do all those things, right? You know, we have this connection with our teens, we have a relationship, we try to reframe things. If they're going through hard things, we try to help them reframe it so they can see their situation in a different light. Whenever we see them, you know, kind of like in trouble, you know, we're tuning into it. We're putting them in therapy, you know, we're doing so. Let's say we do all those things, right? And our teenager still runs away. Now what? Right? So like I said, we really want to be practical, because a lot of times our parents don't know exactly what to do. What do I do? Who do I call? Do I call the police? I thought the police said that you only have to call in a certain amount of hours. So call the police immediately. When your teen leaves and run away, and you have no idea where they haven't been home from school, it's getting dark, you don't know where they're at, nobody knows where they're at, nobody's heard from them, you call them, you can't reach them on their phone, you can't track them on Find My iPhone, you just can't call them or find them. Here's what you do: immediately call the police. Do not wait 24 hours. Okay, so when you call the police, they're going to, or you're going to ask the investigator, they're probably already going to do this for you, but they're going to enter your teen into the National Crime Information Center, NCIC, in which if your teen runs away and they're under the age of 18, there's no waiting period for them to be able to like put that information in there. So if they're under 18, they're just going to put your kid's information into that National Crime Information Center, and this is where all of that alert stuff goes out. So call the police immediately. Call everyone that your teen knows, and try to ask them to help. This is where you lean into your community. This is where I see a lot of people like are on social media. Like if you see the power of social media, like this is actually like a part of social media where it's like it can be used for good. Because if you have a flyer, you have something out there and you're sharing it, usually the National Crime Information Center, they will already have sort of like a flyer of the picture that they got from you and the information on it, where they were last seen and things like that. You can reshare that on social media, and I've seen it to where people are resharing it in so many different counties across Washington, or even outside of Washington, that someone is bound to see. Everybody's on social media. So make sure you call everyone that you know, everyone that your teenager knows, and ask them for help. Another thing that you can do is make sure you're going through their rooms. I know sometimes parents are like, I don't want to go through their, it's their privacy. No. Privacy is out the door when they have ran away. Okay, so look into your teen's room. Look for, if you have access to their social media accounts, maybe there's a laptop. Go through all of those things. If you're able to pull up the phone records of maybe who they've called, if they're on your phone plan, do all of those things. These are practical things that if your teen runs away tomorrow, these are the things that we want to make sure that that you can use and you can start implementing tomorrow if that ever happens. And then also, this is a number where you call this number, and it's like a switchboard, and this is where like you can leave a message. So how this works is you can leave a message at this phone number. It's like a switchboard, and sometimes like when the teens are out there in the streets, they have, for some reason, they have resources where they'll be able to, like, if they call this number, they'll be able to hear like maybe or find out if like any of their family members have left messages for them on this number. So it's 1-800-RUNAWAY. So again, like these are just some of the tools that you can just start implementing like immediately. Anything else that I'm missing, Scarlett?
No, I just want to continue to emphasize, like Sala said, privacy is out the door when your child makes a decision. Because and my whole thing is it's like they'll be mad at you, but it's okay. And it's because again, they decided to make a decision that causes you to make a different decision so that they can be safe. So that there can be a protection. And so the thing about the 1-800-RUNAWAY, there is a website. I think it's 1-800-RUNAWAY.org. And it literally, that's where it's like a teen hub that teens can go to find that's how they find resources for safety, food, shelter.
Out in the streets.
Out in the streets, for those who are out in the streets. So again, there's a lot of resources surrounding teens if they decide. They even have resources of how they can return back home and how to have the conversation, which is part of what we'll be discussing next. But again, I'm really emphasizing on the whole be curious. It's okay to ask your teens who their friends are. Look at their social media accounts, because they're not 18. They're living in your household. So you have to ask the curious question. And that goes back to like what Sala said in the previous slide, is connecting with your teen. You know, so for example, one of the ways I connect with my son, who is a preteen, I said he's allowed to, when we have conversations, I say to him, like in-depth conversation, I said, you're allowed to ask me any questions without limits, and I will answer it to his age. So I'm not giving any like long elongated details, but it is just to answer the curiosity of whatever he wants to know. So and it ranges. So again, but that's the way that I connect with him, because I'm just curious. I'm like, what do you think about? Or what do you think about? Because we often don't have those connection point with our teens. So for example, one of the questions I asked my son is just like, what was your highlight of the day and what was your low light of the day? And whatever your low light is, how did you overcome it? Like what helps you navigate through it? So those are just some questions that we have shared, like in particular when we do like parenting stuff with the parents that we see. So
good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep, we're good in the chats. Anybody want to add anything or have a question? Nope. Okay, cool.
We'll keep it moving. All right, so let's say your teenager comes home. So important. And this is such a critical time because there's a lot of high emotions. You know, you have a lot, as parents, you have a lot of high emotions because you're probably like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna be with this kid. At the same time, you're wondering like, what in the world happened? So when your teen comes home, make the time to decompress. Both you and your kid needs to decompress. Okay. So that means like, not when they're coming home and you're there, where were you? Why did you leave? Like, no, that does not happen immediately. You need some time to decompress as a parent, and your kid needs time to decompress as a runaway or as a person that like just came back. So there's so much going on. There's so many emotions. The emotions are high, and nothing is going to go well if everyone's emotions are heightened. Okay, if everyone's emotions are activated, there's not going to be a good, effective conversation that's going to happen or dialogue. So take some time to decompress, maybe a day or two. Don't even talk about the runaway. Don't even talk about the reasons why this so-and-so ran away. Just take some time to decompress, okay? And so next thing we would recommend is like when the time is right, that's when you start to ask questions. When the time is right. And that time could be maybe 2 days later. Maybe when you notice like, okay, like you're kind of calmed down. I think that's a good indicator is when you realize that like, okay, my heart is not beating anymore. So I'm like feeling a bit more calm. So I think this is a good time for me to sort of ask. So then this is the right time for you to ask your questions. Ask the questions that you want to ask. And then you listen, not ask your questions. And, you start saying your reasons of why this was wrong, no, just ask your questions and take some time to listen. Why did you leave? Okay. What's going on? How are you feeling right now? These are just some of the questions, right? These are just some examples. Can you tell me maybe what made you decide to leave? Okay. Was there something like specific that happened, or was it something that anybody said that maybe made you feel like you had to leave? Okay. You ask your question and you listen. Ask your questions and listen. So sometimes like when you ask these questions, it really helps your teen to feel like when you ask your question and you step back and you listen, it helps them to feel heard. It helps them to feel heard and understood because now they're taking their time to say their answers to whatever your questions are. Okay. And it makes them feel like, okay, they're not judging me for what just happened. I don't feel judged. I don't feel like I'm being punished right now. So this is again, that dialogue is asking those questions. Did you feel unhappy or unsafe at home? Okay. Well, what can we do to make sure that you don't feel like that? Or to make sure that you can feel safe at home? Be curious. And that's the key to asking questions, is just to be curious. asking those questions and listen. Don't ask your question to respond to your teen. Ask your question to listen to your teen. When the time is right, then you get to tell your teen how you felt when they ran away. You get to tell them how you felt. When the time is right, you get to tell them how you feel. You know, when I couldn't get a hold of you and I didn't know where you were, I was really scared. I've never been so scared in my life. You tell them how you feel, right? Because then it helps them to understand what you had went through. Okay. And you remind your teen that you love them, that no matter what, you remind them that you love them. Even though this happened, you know, I just want to let you know that, you know, I love you. So you remind them of that. If this isn't the first time that like maybe your teenager has, you know, run away, and if you feel like this is like a cycle that just keeps happening and nothing changes, and you went through all of these things and it just still happens, then I would say maybe getting some professional help, maybe even family therapy, where you get to have a professional be able to navigate or facilitate the conversations between you and your teenager, and really hopefully get to the bottom of maybe why, what is at the root of all of this that's obviously not coming out from your teen or maybe even the parent. So how can we get to the root of that? So again, these are just some of the really, really basic practical ways that we want to leave you with, to be able to, like, when your teen comes home, take some time to decompress. Make sure when you ask your question, you're asking to listen and not asking to respond to them. Make sure you let your teen know how you feel, because once you do that, it helps them to understand you and what you went through. Remind them that you care for them and that you love them. And then if anything else, like you feel like this just keeps going, get some professional help. Okay. We can pause there. Do you have any comments?
Yeah. Comment in the chat is, I have a no judgment rule with my daughter, where if she's ever in a situation that she shouldn't be and wants to come home but is scared that I'll get mad, she can call me, say no judgment, and tell me where she's at, and I'll come and get her, and we'll talk about it after when she's safe. She hasn't had to use it yet, but I put it on the table to hopefully help her keep her safe. I love that.
I love that.
Love that.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing I want to add is the big thing, especially when even before this, if your teen gets in trouble, is to still remind them that you love them.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I always tell my child when he does get in trouble, whether it's at home or at school, and I'm like, I'm mad at you, but my love for you does not change. I still love you. And that's the one thing I want, because oftentimes when teens feel like they're in trouble, they don't feel loved. They connect that. They connect the trouble and their parents being mad or angry at them, that they are less lovable or less loved.
Thanks for sharing that, Emma.
We're good in the chats and questions.
And so I think this is where we talk about coming together. You know, how do we bridge that conversation between a parent and your teen? And so some of the questions that we usually like to pose is like, for the parent is being able to like, this is like for the youth on this one. What was your contribution to the problem, right? And then for the parent is how or what are you going to contribute to the solution? Well, this can be for both, for the youth and the parent as well. Because we want to, of course, like we don't want the focus to be on just the youth or just the parents, but we want to be able to like, how do we bridge that gap? How do we come together? And sometimes it's having to address these questions of, you know, being able to, and all of these questions are sort of like that self-reflection on ourselves as the teenagers and as parents. So if we were to give this in a group of like teenagers and their parents sitting in the same room, this would be like, I want you to reflect on this for yourselves. Right?
Yeah.
And this is where we get to have some of that conversation.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, it can be really easy to go into the blame game in this situation when we're talking about coming together. But all parties, parents and teens, have to think about, like Sala said, how did we contribute to the problem? It's both parties play a role in the problem, and how can we contribute to the solution? Both parties have to come. Both parties have to say, here's what I'll do differently. Here's what I'll do differently. So anytime like I know I did something wrong, I'm just like, okay, this is what I did wrong. Here's what I'm going to do on my end to make it different, so we don't have the same result. You have to
I
look
think
at
like a big piece of this is like the willingness, right?
absolutely.
Like is that willingness, because then it's like the parent can be willing all they want, but if the teen is like, nah, I don't want nothing to do with y'all, it can be really hard to kind of like bridge that gap or bridge those conversations. So it's like, I think like the biggest part of coming together is the willingness of the both parties to be able to be open to a solution.
Absolutely. So that being said, this is how can we start sharing our feelings healthily? The biggest thing that we want to be, what we are talking about, is being highly proactive, not reactive. And so again, early recognition and intervention can make a significant difference. And then of course, it can help with strengthening family bonds, and open communication in this sense is highly, highly critical. So first thing is, again, identify what makes you feel emotionally safe, which is tone, language, listening ear, encouragement, directness, softness, advice, whatever it is that you need. Identify what makes you feel emotionally safe. Next, again, like I said a little bit earlier, use a feelings wheel. Remember, we talked about in our feelings class. If you didn't attend that, please rewatch that. We talked about how to identify your surface, middle, and root feelings, with the root feeling being the one that we must address, not continue to ignore, but we have to continue to address. And again, share with an emotionally safe person. That is a key factor, sharing with somebody who is emotionally safe. Lastly, next is journal your feelings, write them down, video blog, use art, whatever you decide to do. We just need to give those feelings a space. And again, it goes back to sharing with somebody and emotionally safe. Because again, when you give those feelings a space, it helps reduce the intensity and helps with relief. Again, acknowledgement is a big key factor in regards to your feelings. And then lastly, just take a break. Sometimes we just need to break it, because taking that break from whatever it is when we're talking about feelings, it just helps us reset and helps reduce stress. So those are some of the ways that you can start sharing your feelings healthily. Big thing is initiate the conversation, like Sala was saying, connect with your team. Again, the big thing is for parents, we want to talk about listening actively and validating feelings. And again, approach in a calm way, like Sala was saying, we have been saying, is approach with a curiosity. Again, seek professional help. Whether it's therapy, counseling, family counseling, or therapy. Utilizing, the other big thing is utilize your school counselors. And they have mental health resources as well. Utilize the Department of Health. Each county has a Department of Health where they have mental health resources on their website. And lastly, like somebody just said a little bit earlier, so it's what she did with her daughter was she created a safety plan. Develop a plan together to address whatever the issues or challenges to ensure not just physical safety, but emotional safety as well. And again, you want to identify those emotionally safe people, those trusted adults, and safe places that they can go. One of the things I'll say for me, what I've done with my child is just like, I know they're not going to want to talk to me all the time, but we have identified people that he can go to talk about whatever it is. And I even told him, I'm just like, if that's a therapist, just let me know. I'll find you one, because it's just like my whole goal is to remove like whatever I feel about how he should be, and just get him the help that he needs, not the help that I feel like he should have. So again, don't be afraid to initiate the conversation. Don't be afraid to be curious. Again, I want to encourage you all to seek professional help if needed. And of course, like somebody shared a little bit earlier, create a safety plan. So that concludes our conversation for tonight. So this is our contact information. So again, for those who are watching now and those who are rewatching, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Sala and I. We are here to help. And again, if you need additional resources besides the one we have shared today, we are willing to assist with that as well. Again, we want to thank you for tonight's community conversation. Again, we know it's challenging to have these conversations, but we know it's needed to have these conversations. So again, so we can start changing and navigating through these challenges so that we can have a different outcome for our communities. So that being said, I'm going to pass it on over to, and again, thank you all for attending, and I'm going to pass it on over to Sealy so he can officially close us out.
Thank you both. Again, I think I've sat in this class like 4 times, but I always learn something new. So that was very helpful and useful information. And we are on again next Tuesday. It is depression and anxiety. What does it look like in navigating cultural stigmas? So please join in there. And also just to, continue to plug Sala and Scarlett. They actually have a live event on May 30th with APCC. So if you actually want a snapshot, and I fanboy out on them, so I'm big fans of them. I typically go and check them out. They will be down there. Let me put the flyer in the chat, and then I will also put it on the Facebook chat as well. And lastly, Scarlett did put our survey in there. So please, if you're rewatching this on the Big Oofs Radio or on their YouTube page, it'll be in the chat box. But it really helps us, find funding to support the AA-NHPI communities on creating strategies to, unpack this thing we call mental health. But with that, we were over a little bit tonight, but thank you guys for hanging in there and being with us. So thank you all.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.